Okay, so magic, huh? You guys really want to know if it's real?
Yeah, it's a big question, right?
A
Like,
huge one.
where do you even start?
Well, lucky for us, we've got a ton of material for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah. What kind of stuff are we looking at?
We've got some Yale lectures on like the history of witchcraft, which is cool.
I've heard those are great, very comprehensive.
Yeah, and then just to mix it up, some pamphlets on early American witchcraft beliefs.
Oh, wow. Going way back.
Yeah, should be fun to compare and contrast all that with this
Uh,
contemporary book on Wicca that I found.
Modern magic
Yeah,
versus the historical stuff.
yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how those different perspectives.
Really stack up.
Yeah. I mean, are we talking about the same thing when we say magic? Like, is Harry Potter in the same realm as the Salem witch trials?
Good point. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but
That can mean a lot of different things.
exactly. And those Yale lectures really highlight that.
Oh, how so?
Well, they start by digging into the whole historical context of witchcraft in Europe. You know, focusing on this concept of maleficium,
Maleficium.
which basically means harm caused by magic.
Okay, so like straight up curses and hexes.
Yeah, pretty much, but it was taken very seriously back
I
then.
bet.
People genuinely feared it, thought it could bring misfortune or illness.
Even death.
Right. It wasn't just some abstract concept.
Yeah, it had real world consequences.
Exactly. The lectures even talk about this woman, Ursula Kemp.
Ursula Kemp.
Yeah, she was executed for witchcraft back in the 1580s in England.
Wow, just for being accused of witchcraft.
Well, she was accused of using magic to harm her neighbors, and
Things didn't end well for her.
yeah, sadly not.
See, that's the kind of stuff that gets to me.
It's intense, right?
Really makes you think about how powerful belief can be, even if it's based on fear or superstition.
Totally, and that's what's so compelling about these historical accounts.
You get to see how people actually lived with those beliefs.
Right, like magic was woven into their everyday lives.
They had to find explanations for misfortune, and sometimes a witch was the easiest answer.
It's human nature, I guess.
And speaking of witches, the lectures also trace how that stereotypical witch image evolved over time.
Oh, yeah, how so?
Like starting with cunning folk who used herbs and charms,
Right, almost like folk healers.
and then shifting to these demonic figures associated with the devil.
Oh, wow, so a pretty drastic change in perception.
Right. It went from your quirky aunt who knows a good cold remedy.
To, like, the ultimate evil.
Exactly. Like during the witch hunts.
People saw them as a threat to society, a tool of the devil.
That's so different from how magic is viewed in a lot of modern traditions,
Oh, absolutely. Especially something like Wicca.
where it's all about nature and positive intentions.
Right. There's a big emphasis on harmony and not causing harm,
Exactly.
which is a pretty key distinction.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's interesting.
What's that?
Even with all our scientific advancements,
Huh.
that fear of magic, it hasn't really gone away completely.
Yeah, it's true. You still hear about people putting curses on each other or blaming bad luck on something supernatural.
It's like a part of us can't help but look for those kinds of explanations.
Right. Maybe we're just hardwired to believe in something beyond the ordinary, even if it's scary.
Maybe there's a part of us that likes to be scared.
Yeah. That's probably why those stories about witches and magic keep popping up throughout history.
They tap into something primal in us.
Something we can't quite shake off.
I think so, for sure.
Okay, but before we get too deep into that, let's talk about America.
Oh, yeah, those pamphlets you mentioned.
Yeah, those early American pamphlets, I gotta say, they were a wild ride.
I bet. What were some of the highlights?
Okay, so picture this. Early America, vast and untamed, full of dangers and the unknown,
Sounds ominous already.
and lurking in the shadows. Witches, of course.
Of course.
These pamphlets are filled with anxieties about witchcraft, especially after the Salem witch trials.
Right, that makes sense.
It's like any little thing that went wrong, a sick cow, a bad storm.
They blamed it on a witch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like a catch-all explanation for anything they couldn't understand.
Witchcraft as a scapegoat.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really interesting is how all that anxiety was tied up with their religious beliefs.
Oh, how so?
Well, they saw bad things as a sign of God's wrath or demonic influence.
It was a world where the line between the spiritual and supernatural was super blurry.
Yeah, very blurry.
What was it like reading those pamphlets? Did anything really stand out to you?
Well, they were obsessed with protection
Protection from...
from witches and evil spirits.
Like, what kind of protection are we talking about?
They were big on charms and rituals to ward off evil.
Oh, like what?
One pamphlet suggested carrying a pouch of rosemary and sage for protection. Another one recommended hanging iron horseshoes above doorways.
Really?
Yeah, it's this weird mix of practicality and superstition, you know.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating how different cultures try to control those forces.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? You still hear about witchcraft accusations in modern America.
No way, really?
Yeah, not like Salem, thankfully,
Yeah.
but it shows that belief in magic.
Hasn't completely disappeared.
No, not at all. It's still out there in one form or another.
It makes you wonder what it is about magic that's so enduring.
Right. Why are we still so fascinated, even centuries later?
Good question.
But, before we go down that rabbit hole, maybe we should shift gears and talk about modern Wicca.
Oh, yeah. How does that fit into all of
It's
this?
like a totally different world, really.
In what way?
Well, Wicca is all about nature, balance, and using magic for good.
Sounds a lot more positive than those scary pamphlets.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so tell me more about this.
Well, this book I found on witchcraft and Wicca.
Okay.
It's like stepping into a completely different universe.
How so?
It's all about working with natural energies, not trying to control or dominate them.
That's a big difference from the historical stuff we've been talking about.
Huge. Like, harm none is a central principle in Wicca.
Right, it's not about curses or manipulating people.
No, it's about personal growth and healing and connecting with something larger than yourself.
Sounds almost spiritual.
It is. And one thing that I find really cool about Wicca is
How is that?
that it's not like one size fits all.
What do you mean?
There are so many different traditions and practices within Wicca.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
Like there's Gardnerian Wicca, eclectic Wicca, and tons of others.
So lots of different flavors.
Exactly. It's more about finding what resonates with your own beliefs and spiritual path.
Not as rigid as some other belief systems.
Right. It's more like a framework, with some basic guidelines that you can adapt.
Interesting.
And a lot of modern Wiccans also draw from other spiritual or occult traditions.
Like what?
The book mentions Kabbalah, ceremonial magic, and the use of ritual tools, all kinds of stuff.
So it's like a blend of different influences.
Yeah, a real mix and match approach.
Sounds fascinating.
It is.
So much to learn.
Right. But maybe we should start with something a little more basic.
Like what?
Like, what are those ritual tools all about? The wands, the atoms, the chalices.
They sound pretty cool.
Right. There's something so mysterious about them. I'm super curious about how they're used.
Yeah, me too. But I guess that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, maybe for the next deep dive.
Sounds good to me. So where were we? Yes. Ritual tools.
Yeah, like those wands and chalices and stuff
Right, they're often used in Wiccan ceremonies.
to like cast spells and stuff.
Well, it's more about focusing energy and intent.
Oh, okay.
Each tool has its own symbolic meaning and purpose.
Makes sense. It's like adding another layer to the whole practice.
Exactly. It's not just about waving a wand and poof, magic happens.
There's more to it than that.
Definitely there's thought and intention behind it.
Right. Like, you're not just manipulating objects, you're working with energies.
Exactly. Wiccan magic is all about aligning your will with natural energies.
And those tools help with that.
They can, yeah.
It's like they create a sacred space.
A container for your intentions.
And that helps you connect with, the divine or whatever you call it.
Right. It's a way of focusing your energy and your will.
So it's not just about the tools themselves, it's about what they represent.
Exactly. They're symbols of your inner power and intention.
That's pretty cool.
It is, yeah. It's like they bridge the gap between the physical and the spiritual.
Okay, so we've talked about historical witchcraft, modern Wicca, all these different perspectives on magic.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But I think the big question is still out there.
The big question.
Yeah. The one we started with.
Is magic real?
Yep, that's the one.
Well, that's a tough one to answer.
I know, right? But after all this research, what do you think?
Honestly, I think it comes down to how you define magic.
Okay, so how do you define it?
Well, if we're talking about the ability to influence events through unseen forces,
Okay.
then we have to consider the power of belief itself.
Oh, interesting.
Think about the placebo effect. It's well documented that belief can create real physical changes.
So you're saying even if there's no, literal spell casting, just believing in something can make it real?
In a way, yes.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It is. And if you look back at those historical witchcraft accusations, you see that belief in magic had real consequences, whether the accusations were true or not.
Right, people were imprisoned, even killed, based on those beliefs.
Exactly. So even if magic wasn't real in the sense of flying broomsticks...
It became real through its impact on people's lives.
Precisely.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah, if you believe strongly enough that you've been cursed, it can manifest in your life, even if it's just through fear and paranoia.
That's kind of scary, actually.
It is. It shows how powerful our minds can be.
For good or for bad.
Exactly, and that power is something we see in modern magic, too.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
even in Wicca, there's debate about how much we can influence events, even with good intentions.
It's tricky balance, right?
It is, and it raises all sorts of questions about free will, destiny, the nature of reality.
Big questions.
Huge one.
So where does that leave us?
I think it leaves us with more questions than answers, which is okay.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I think the important thing is to keep asking those questions, to keep exploring.
And to be open to the possibility that there's more to the world than we can see or explain.
Exactly.
I like that.
Me too. It keeps things interesting.
It does. And, even if we never find definitive proof that magic is real,
Yeah.
the act of exploring these ideas, of diving into these different beliefs and practices,
What about?
it's pretty magical in itself, wouldn't you say?
I think so. It's a journey of discovery, and there's always something new to learn, so much to learn about this stuff.
Right. Like, what if it was all real?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, real magic. Not just the power of belief stuff, but, like, tangible world-altering magic.
Okay, so, you're saying, what if spells actually worked? Potions did what they were supposed to, all that.
Yeah. What would that world even look like? It kind of blows my mind to think about it.
It's interesting.
Like, would we even recognize it as magic?
Maybe it would just become normal, part of everyday life.
Right. Like electricity.
Electricity, how so?
Well, it was once this crazy, mysterious force, but now
Yeah, now we just flick a switch and
it's just there.
we totally take it for granted.
Exactly. So maybe magic would be like that?
Or maybe it would be more like an art form,
An art form?
Yeah, like something you have to study and practice to master.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Like, instead of doctors, we'd have healers who use magic.
Yeah. And farmers could use spells to make their crops grow better.
No more GMOs.
Yeah.
Just good old-fashioned magic.
Right. It's like a whole different way of interacting with the world.
Okay, but think about the implications, though.
What kind of implications?
Like, if everyone had access to real magic,
That's a good point. It could be really chaotic.
or dangerous, who gets to decide how it's used?
It raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Right. Even in Wicca, where they're all about harm none, there's still debate about,
Don't go.
like, how much you should try to influence things, even with good intentions.
Right, because even good intentions can have unintended consequences.
Exactly. So imagine if everyone had that kind of power.
Yeah. It could be a recipe for disaster.
Or maybe it would usher in a new era of peace and prosperity.
Maybe both?
True. But I think you're right. It definitely raises some big questions.
Huge ones.
Like, what would it even mean to be human in a world with real magic? Would we even be the same species?
Right. Like, if we could literally change reality with our minds.
Would we even need technology anymore?
Good question. It's like all our current systems and structures.
It'd all be obsolete.
Yeah. We'd have to start over from scratch.
Wow, this is getting pretty deep.
It is, but I think it's important to think about these things.
Yeah, it's like expanding our understanding of what's possible.
Right, and maybe challenging our assumptions about the world.
And ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
We have. It's been quite a deep dive.
It has. But hey, that's what we do here.
Always exploring.
Always asking those big questions.
Yeah. Even if we don't always find the answers.
Right. But, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
So, to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us on this wild ride. We've covered a lot of ground, but ultimately, the question of whether magic is real.
It's up to you to decide.
Exactly. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and who knows? Maybe you'll discover your own magic along the way.
That's a great way to put it.
Until next time, stay curious and keep those minds open.
See you then.